There are so many things in Path of Exile 2 that the game never fully explains to players, plus many secret tips and tricks that can help you progress so much faster and easier in this game. Secrets like how to farm infinite gold, or how to infinitely respawn and farm bosses, and much more. So I recorded the absolute best starting tips I could find and jammed them all into this video, with each tip getting progressively more useful, so make sure to stick around to the end. But I had to drop this massive tip first because everybody needs to know this, and that's how to increase your movement speed. So if you haven't already noticed, movement in this game is critical, not only for combat, but also for exploration. I mean, by default, characters in POE2 move very slow, and this can make it difficult to avoid many boss mechanics like telegraphed AoEs and projectiles. Add to this that the maps in this game are absolutely huge, and to explore every nook and cranny will take so much time without any movement speed bonuses, so boosting your movement as soon as possible is really essential, and you can do this as early as the first few levels in the game to make a huge difference overall in your playthrough and quality of life. Now, to do this, you want to check in with Renly as soon as you enter Clearfell to see the boots that he has for sale, and if you're lucky, you might get one with a movement speed bonus like this right away. Now, if not, that's okay, just keep checking back, as well as to make sure to identify any boots that you pick up from monsters, as these can have a movement speed bonus too. Trust me, these make a huge difference, not just for traversing maps, but also for avoiding those boss mechanics and helping you to get better positioning, avoid getting trapped, and so much more. But once you have this bonus, you'll never want to go back to anything else. But before we move on, a quick word from today's video sponsor, Flint Treasure of Oblivion. This tactical-driven RPG redefines the pirate fantasy genre by blending strategic gameplay with a classic pirate tale inspired by Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. If you've ever dreamed of hoisting the black flag, building a legendary crew, or chasing untold riches, then this is the game for you. Flint brings a fresh take to the tactical RPG by diving deep into the life of Captain Flint and his daring crew during the golden age of piracy. Explore bustling port towns, treacherous waters, and ancient temples as you uncover the secrets of a mysterious treasure. But before you set out for adventure, be sure to choose your crew wisely. Each member has unique skills and archetypes that can synergize to turn the tide of battle in your favor. From sword clashes to flintlock pistol duels, every encounter is a test of your cunning and leadership as you strive to uncover the treasures of old. But in Flint, the loot you find is also a resource for leveling up your crew and customizing their abilities, which leads you to the decision, should you invest in better gear or reward the most loyal? The game is not just about tactical combat and gold coins. Flint's comic book style storytelling combines choice-driven moments with historically grounded details, creating a world ripped from the history books and pirate tales of legend. And all of this is accompanied by gorgeous visuals and handcrafted locations built on Unreal Engine 5 for peak performance and gameplay. Flint Treasure of Oblivion will be releasing soon on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. And if you'd like to purchase or learn more about the game, just use my link down in the description or the pinned comment below to get started. And thanks again to Flint Treasure of Oblivion for sponsoring this video. So speaking of vendors in Path of Exile 2, we talked about getting boots early. You'll also want to return to vendors often in this game because every time you level up, new items will spawn in their inventory, and these items can also be very high quality. Even in the early game, you can frequently find epic items with highly desirable stats that can easily serve as an upgrade for your build, so make sure you add this to your level up routine. Always go back, always check the vendors. Now, another reason why you should return to vendors often is that, again, with that level up, the vendor's inventory could change next time, and if there's something good that you want, well, it might actually disappear once you level up and come back. So if that's the case, like here where this crossbow was an awesome upgrade for my mercenary, I actually had to go farm the gold that I needed while also avoiding experience so that I could buy this item before it got replaced. And by the way, I have an awesome tip coming up for farming gold. That's coming up in just a minute. But speaking of which, you probably noticed that there's lots of containers in Path of Exile 2 where you can get gold as well. These are going to be all around the different maps and levels, and it can be pretty annoying to go up to every single one just to open it. In many cases, containers like pots, for example, can be destroyed all at once, and so instead of needing to click on every single container individually, if you have a skill in your kit that does AoE damage, like grenades, for example, on the mercenary class, then you can simply destroy all those pots and get your gold more quickly. Just fire off that skill, destroy all the pots, and save yourself a little bit of time gathering up that gold. Of course, one of the best ways to get gold in Path of Exile 2 is by selling your unused gear to vendors, which means you really shouldn't be leaving anything behind, especially early on in the game, as each and every piece of gear is possible income that you can use towards, better weapons and armor when you eventually find it for sale. So as soon as your inventory gets filled, don't start deleting things or dropping them. All you need to do is open a portal, which will automatically take you back into town, where you can quickly sell off those excess items. Now, some additional things to consider here is that you should never sell items that need to be identified, as they will sell for more after you actually identify them and see their full stats. So always identify first, either using scrolls or eventually for free once you unlock that option with the hooded one, which is even faster. Second here is that you will often find orbs of transmutation, which again can improve the quality of an item before you sell, giving you some more gold overall. Now you can save some of these orbs for crafting as well, but I found myself getting so many of these that I just use them sporadically to upgrade those gray items and get a little bit more gold. And don't forget to open your map while you're doing this exploration process in Path of Exile 2, just to make sure you found everything, because secret bosses and treasure chests are hidden everywhere. And my favorite way to do this, which is pretty quick, is just open your map overlay like this, which conveniently is going to highlight your unexplored map edges in this blue color, and you just follow that blue line until you don't have any more left, which is going to mean you've effectively explored everywhere you possibly can on that particular map. Speaking of maps, do you know which bosses you've missed already? Well, this is also explained on the map in Path of Exile 2, but not very well in my opinion. Basically, the way this works is that the shaded skulls here represent bosses you've killed already, while the lighter or the white colored skulls are going to represent bosses you have not killed yet. Skills with a plus sign are going to represent bosses that will also give you a consumable permanent buff to your character. Things like more life, more mana, cold damage reduction, and so on. You can shift to inspect as well in the map, which will tell you more about each point of interest. So for example, you can see what those permanent boss bonuses are ahead of time if you want to, and you can also get more information and clues about hidden areas. These notes are also going to update after you discover the location or defeat the boss, so you may want to check them again. And don't forget, there's also an above ground and a below ground view to the map, which can be pretty easy to miss. But I do want to mention just a couple of combat tips here as well before we get to the really juicy secrets. And one of those is how to deal with shielded enemies, which can pretty much ruin your day, especially if you play a ranged build, because as I'm sure you found out, they just deflect everything back that you throw at them. Now, the secret here to easily defeat these enemies, there's two options really. One is you can use ground-based attacks and dots, which cannot be reflected. And two would be to get into melee range, forcing them to attack. So with this specific type of enemy, when they are in their attack animation, they actually cannot block you anymore. And so it's really easy at that point just to sidestep their attack and then use your best attacks while in that close range. Whatever you do though, don't attack them from a distance with any type of rapid fire ranged attack yourself, or you're going to get all of those reflected and you'll be dead in just a few seconds. And now the other thing that you need to have a plan for is getting trapped in combat, because for bosses in POE2, this is pretty much their favorite thing to do to you. Plus, it's just really easy to get surrounded even by basic enemies on some maps where you can quickly get overwhelmed and just die. So it's at this point where you need some mobility on your build, and specifically like a jump-based skill is going to help you a lot in that regard. Now there are several of these types of skills in the game, and you don't have to use them all. You don't have to use them all the time either, but they are there for you when you need them, especially for specific boss fight mechanics. Now, my favorite is the leap shot skill. This comes from the bow skill line. Again, you'll need to have a bow equipped as your secondary weapon for this to actually work, so you can use the skill, but that's an option. Then there's also a jump skill for maces called Leap Slam, which is another easy escape tool. But again, you would need either a one-handed or two-handed mace equipped as your secondary weapon to make use of that ability. But either way, make sure you have some type of planned escape tool on your skill bar at all times. It's going to make your life way easier. Now also, in terms of boss mechanics, if you're struggling with a specific boss fight, you can actually prepare for it better by figuring out what type of elemental damage that they're doing and collecting and equipping charms to increase your resistance against that specific elemental damage type. For example, the final boss of Act 1 does quite a lot of ice damage, and I was getting nearly one-shot by these ice beams, which come down from the ceiling really quickly and they're hard to avoid. But once I equipped a charm, which actually reduced my ice damage taken, it made the entire fight much easier by reducing the damage of those specific attacks. So Path of Exile 2, it gives you the tools, you just need to know when and where to use them. Of course, being successful in Path of Exile 2 also has a lot to do with how you set up your skills and especially your support gems. And the problem here is that the game really tries to oversimplify things for beginners, I think, which is, having not played the original game myself, I appreciated that at first. But as I started to get the hang of things, I wanted less hand-holding and more control on how to build my character. Now, the problem here is that in that support gem screen, by default, the game recommends to you the best support gems, or basically what it thinks are the best support gems for any particular skill, but they might not be the best. Like in this case for the Sorcerer and their Firebolt ability, the game has recommended Ignition, Pierce, and Controlled Destruction, which I guess are not bad, but are certainly limiting if this is what you think the only options are for this particular skill. Like you might not even look at anything else and just slot these and go about your day. But in truth, POE2 has dozens of possible gems, in fact, that could work for this skill equally as well, if not better, than these 3 recommended gems. So to see these all the time, you're going to want to untoggle the recommended option on this screen. And once that's done, you can see that there are in fact, dozens of support gems that can actually work with this skill, spread through strength, dexterity, and intelligence support gems. And I can pick any one of these as long as they match the weapon or the skill type, and I have enough stats to do so. And there's even more potentially in the future, once you unlock rank 2 support gems. So make sure to toggle this so you can see all of your options right away. But probably the best thing you can do in Path of Exile 2 overall to improve your build is stock up on gold. Lots of gold and, of course, powerful items, which is where our final 2 tips come in extremely handy. Now, we talked a lot about gold early in Act 1, but there's actually a repeatable treasure room here, which you can use to infinitely farm as much gold as you want. The room is going to be hidden in the mausoleum level. I think you get here around level 7 or 8, and it does appear in a random location within that map, so I can't actually give you a specific spot because that does vary, but basically, you'll know you're in the right place when you see this checkpoint and these tombs side by side, and then just look for the pillar with a blue switch on it. Use this to open the secret door to the basement with about 400 gold and 2 gold chests. This is going to get you off to a great start. And as I said, you can farm this area as many times as you want to, but in order to do that, you need to actually reset the instance, which is our next tip. Simply travel back to town using your portal, but instead of using your portal to go back, you're going to want to use the waypoint. When you travel via the waypoint, you then are going to have the option of clicking onto any location, and instead of teleporting back to the instance that you came from, you can actually tell the game to create a new instance for you, which will have a new layout, new mobs, and of course reset treasure rooms. So like I said, you can farm this room as many times as you want, and it's a great way to make some gold quickly in Act 1 and get a lot of upgrades. Now, this same feature can also be used to farm bosses in any zone in the game, as once you reset the map instance, obviously it's also going to reset every boss on the map as well, even if you've already defeated them. So if you want to test your luck at getting some nice boss loot, or simply test a new version of your build and how it performs versus previous versions, this is another great way to do that. The trick here, I think, is to find maps which are relatively small or have easy to find bosses, such as the Mausoleum level, again in Act 1, which not only has that great treasure room that we mentioned earlier, but also a boss which you can usually find very quickly since the map is rather small. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you found this at all helpful, do me a favor and crush that like button to let YouTube know to share this video with others. Of course, if you have more secrets or tips and tricks, I would love to hear those in the comments section below. Drop those down there so that maybe I can add those in a future video. And if you're interested in more Path of Exile 2, then check out this video next where I go over the best starting build in the game, and I will see you there.